Huge thank you to CIBC for making We Get It possible. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of We Get It. My name is Karine, and I'm the program director with Young Adult Cancer Canada, YAC for short. Happy to have you here. Happy to be with another wonderful guest today. Shanna is with me. We'll get to know Shanna shortly. Today, I am proudly wearing my Cancer Sucks t-shirt. Back to the Future. Thank you, Travis Gobet, survivor in the YAC community, who created these amazing shirts years ago. I have about 4 wearing it because today we are going to get to talk about something that I know relates so much to our young adult cancer community and sucks, which is fear of cancer recurrence. So wearing my hair up, I changed room so for those of you who watch We Get It from time to time, most times I'm upstairs in my bedroom, which is my office. Today I'm downstairs because it's pouring rain, so we can hear the rain kind of drip, and my internet was kind of crappy. So I came downstairs to hopefully help with that. Wearing my hair up, big earrings, Cancer Sucks t-shirt, plants around me. I'm happy. Hope you are all well. Shanna, hi, and thank you for
Good
being here.
morning. Good morning. It's actually beautiful and sunny here in Ottawa.
Of
Bit
course.
of a difference.
Bit of a
Yeah.
difference. Yeah, it is the rain, drizzle, and fog period in Newfoundland where we're going to have a lot of rain, a lot of fog, but that's okay. Snow is gone. We don't care.
Yeah, it's still beautiful there.
Yes,
I'm really excited to be here this morning.
I'm really happy you're here too. Really happy you're here. How about you describe a little bit where you're at? Is it like your kitchen, your office?
I'm in my family room.
Okay.
Um, yeah, my kids are shipped off to school, so I figured I'd just come out here and I'm sick of hiding in my room. So yeah, no, I'm out here in my family room and it's bright and sunny outside, so lots of nice natural light. My
That
hair's not long enough to put up yet, but it's growing.
it is. Last time I saw Shanna, her hair were really short, like
Yes.
curly and short, short. So it is growing beautifully, may I say. With still a little wave in them, so that hasn't
There
gone.
is, yeah. No, it was much curlier before I lost it all, but it's still, yeah,
It's
thinner, but still my hair.
That's it. Still a beauty. So, like I said to everyone, so we're going to talk about fear of cancer recurrence, but there is a reason to that. So, if you don't know, in 2017, Young Adult Cancer Canada, along with Dr. Sheila Garland at the Memorial University here in Newfoundland, we started this big project to do what we wanted to be the biggest research on young adults of its kind. So we developed this big research to learn more and gather as much as we could research data and findings around the young adult cancer population. We did this, and years later, we had 622 young adults take part in this research, which is amazing. And I've found a lot of stuff, still analyzing and finding things. We have a beautiful research team that is working with us in continuing to dig into all the things we found. But one of those things is that fear of cancer recurrence is a real thing in our young adult cancer population. So that's what we're going to talk about with Shanna today. And Shanna is going to attach her story to that. So I'll give you, in a super snapshot, quick kind of idea of what we've found, some of the main findings for the prime data around fear of cancer recurrence, and then we're going to hear about Shanna's story and how does that impact someone's life. So fear of cancer recurrence. So if you don't know, it is defined as fear, worry, or concern relating to the possibility that cancer will come back or progress. As simple as that. And when you think of the young adult cancer population, what you have to keep in mind if you are not a young adult cancer patient or survivor or supporter of one is that one, young adults live many, many years, hopefully, after their cancer diagnosis. I think the last stats that I had was that 83% will live decades past their diagnosis and live decades with long-term side effects as well. And fear of cancer recurrence is a form of side effect of cancer. And I say it all the time. I don't care if you're tired of hearing it. It's the truth. Cancer takes longer. It takes longer to recover from cancer than to be treated for it. So that also ties into having to deal with things like fear of cancer recurrence. 59.2%. So that is almost 60% of the people who participated in the ACT Prime study had clinically significant levels of fear of cancer recurrence. In research terms, like you have these levels where if you have normal, kind of dealing with kind of a normal fear of cancer recurrence, like you had cancer, you're a little scared it's going to come back, but it doesn't paralyze your life. The score would be under 16. And as you go up, subclinical levels, they call 16 to 21, and then significant, clinically significant is 22 and higher. And I think for the population, it was closer to 25. So the score was high. And that really meant a big, big majority were really coping with thinking about it every day, thinking about it for significant amount of time every day. So this is what we're talking about. And some of the things they found, which was really interesting, and we'll dig into this, Shanna and I, but the factors that seem to be associated with fear of cancer recurrence was time since diagnosis, previous recurrences. So people who had already a recurrence in their cancer kind of experiences had higher levels of fear of cancer recurrence. Distress, so people were going through distress, moderate to severe, higher fear of cancer recurrence. And body image dissatisfaction, if it was higher, higher fear of cancer recurrence. Time since diagnosis, I didn't say, but the closer to the time of diagnosis, the higher. And when we pass 5 years, which I'll talk about later, it diminishes. So these are snapshot, just the key findings, but it just hopefully illustrates how real of an issue this is. So Shanna, I know that you've had personal and recent experiences with fear of cancer recurrence, but how about you start by telling us a little bit about you, a little bit more about you, your experience with cancer, and then we'll dig into fear of cancer recurrence together.
Sure. Yeah. So in 2018, I was diagnosed with stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma, which is a type of breast cancer. Mine was triple positive, so it was growing pretty quickly. So I did chemo first, and then did then did surgery. I couldn't have radiation. I'll get into that in a second. Luckily, when I had my surgery, they were able to remove all that was left. I had a really, really good response to chemo, so that was great. There was hardly any cancer cells left when they removed it. But during that time, I ended up qualifying for genetic testing to find out why at 38 I had a breast cancer diagnosis. Because, I mean, people are getting diagnosed younger and younger with breast cancer, but it's still young to be, it's not the norm. So during my genetic testing, they discovered that I had this really, really rare genetic mutation. It's a mutation of my TP53 gene. And those genes everybody's got them, and they're the gene that suppresses tumor growth. So mine are mutated and messed up. So basically, I'm at a much, much higher risk for not only cancer reoccurrence, but also a ton of other new primary cancers.
Mm.
So if you look it up, it's called Lee-Fermani syndrome. And yeah, there's a couple of us, but there aren't very many people at all that have it. So
Mhm.
we're still learning more and more about it. Studying elephants, which is there's a link with Lee-Fermani and elephants. Elephants have over 20 TP53 genes, so they actually cannot get cancer, which is a really neat thing.
Go
Yeah,
away. I didn't
elephant.
know
Yeah, that's why I'll talk about one of my ways of dealing. But I got this big elephant tattoo on my arm now. It's my mantra now. Be an elephant.
Be an
Um,
elephant. Oh, I didn't know that. This is so cool. And your tattoo is
yeah.
wicked. Yeah.
Thanks. I kind of love it. So yeah, where was I? Yes, Lee-Fermani. So I've gone now. Oh, and that's why I wasn't able to have radiation in case there were any of that left, because um, I'm very, very sensitive to any type of radiation. I can't have CT scans. I can't. I mean, obviously, if I was dying and there was no other, alternative, I could, but I have to be really careful with all of my scans to avoid radiation because of it causing more cancer.
Mhm.
So with that, I now am on a really strict monitoring protocol. It's called the Toronto Protocol. So I have to have a full body and brain MRI once a year. And this is for the rest of my life. An abdominal and pelvic ultrasound every 6 months, blood work every 3 months. I have to go for skin checks to check for melanoma. Um, all these things. So the fear of cancer reoccurrence is always in my face. Basically, I'm kind of always being tested, just sort of waiting for the next cancer, basically. So
Yeah.
it's a lot. Yeah,
It is a lot. It is a lot because in your case, and it's not in everyone's situation, but it seems to be coming from more than one direction. So kind of screening you in many ways. It's not just, so that's the thing for those of you who are learning about cancer. It's not always the same cancer that is a threat or that is a possibility. It can be different complications and different types of cancer. That is kind of what can happen.
absolutely.
So in
And
your
just
case, it is.
just yeah, no, exactly. And then I had a couple of fractured ribs, which were really, really strange. I did suffer trauma. I was doing reconstructive surgery because I had a double mastectomy. So I was doing reconstructive. I had tissue expanders, so maybe that had something to do with it. But they were worried that perhaps there was something going on with my bones. So I had to do a bone scan, and that's when they discovered I had a few fractured ribs. They wanted to do a repeat scan 3 months later just to make sure everything was resolved, and that's the most recent scan I had was an MRI just to check my exact my neck bones and my ribs and everything. And randomly in that scan they found some 12 millimeter white matter that they thought was perhaps a brain tumor, and I was not expecting that at all. um, it was a shock. I thought I was going to die. Honestly, I thought, oh my God, here we go. Either my breast cancer has spread to my brain, which is one of the most common places it will go, or I have a brain tumor, because with my Lee-Fermani syndrome, brain tumors are one of the most common tumors, that along with the breast cancer. So I thought, here we go again. And I was devastated because it's only, I'm still going through surgeries, for my first diagnosis. And the last thing anyways, it turned out to be what they call an artifact on the MRI. I went for a second MRI with contrast, and apparently on the second MRI, whatever that 12 millimeter thing wasn't there anymore. So a roller coaster.
Yes. And the thing is, it's not like you have those two MRI back to back. There was a period of time you had to wait, basically. You had to
Yeah.
kind of wait and not knowing. How long was that?
They were actually pretty good. I have a great nurse practitioner. I found out So it was about a week and a half between the two, getting the results of the first MRI, and then having my second MRI. So about 2 weeks in between of not knowing, do I have a tumor growing in my brain? Yeah.
Yeah.
So during that time, it was, you know, of course you dealt with the possibility of death, and you had sort of those morbid thoughts, or I did when I had my first diagnosis. But I felt like I had, and with the doctors too, we had a good handle on it. So I was really fortunate with that. But a brain tumor is just, it was either my cancer had become metastatic, which for that there is no cure. It's treatment as long as possible. Or I had a new primary cancer, and I don't know, pick
Yeah.
which one's better. I'm not sure. Um,
You don't want
so I was really, no, and I have two kids. I have an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old. So I mean, I need to be around to raise them, and that's all I could think about was, I don't know if I can swear on here, but
oh yeah.
shit.
Have you met
Okay.
me?
I know. I just didn't know. But yeah, I was terrified.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to put that into perspective, Shanna, I love how you said it was really quick. It was just a week and a half, which I agree with you. It is quick, but a week and a half can
It
also
seemed
be
like
really
months.
long.
It really was. I wasn't sleeping. And if I was, it was the strangest thing too. I've never actually felt like I was living in a dream before. Like, I guess just that feeling of shock when I first got the results of the first MRI, I actually felt like I was in a dream, like it wasn't real. I'd never experienced that before. I guess just, I was in shock and panic mode, and because they post all of your results online before you even talk to anybody. So I saw them myself, without going over them with a doctor at first. So I've got
Yeah.
an
That
invasion of dogs here.
Oh, that's okay. That is super intense to have to look at this by yourself without having a doctor with you. That's by it. Then the brain must go in all directions
Yes.
with little control.
Yeah. She actually was waiting for the results too, so she called me pretty quickly after they were posted. Yeah. But
Right.
there was a moment of, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to come down from it, to be honest. Like, I'm still, constantly thinking about, you know, my mortality, and yeah.
Yeah. The fear that sits, it doesn't completely wipe clean, disappear after going through a period of intense stress and fear on all levels, like about you and your kids and your family, and all of those things come into play, which makes it a pretty intense week. And in your case, a part of me, are you able, because I guess in within your diagnosis and because of the gene, you must have learned ways to actually live with some level of uncertainty as you go for tests. Like you got, since 2018, you had a
You
lot
want
of
to talk about
tests done.
skin, we call it scanxiety,
Yeah.
in the cancer community, when you're that anxiety that's built around going for scans.
Yeah.
And this was actually my first time going for the full set of scans. I was so naive. Well, first of all, I took a lot of Ativan and clonazepam before I went, because I suffer from anxiety quite badly now, just the reality of it.
Yeah.
But um, I really wasn't expecting a shitty outcome like that. I mean, it turned out to be okay, but at first it was the shittiest of shit, you know? Um, so ways of dealing with it, obviously the Ativan and the clonazepam help, but um, I find I was not prepared going in for that one. I wasn't dealing with it. I kind of just put it in the back burner and just, assumed, again, I guess just being naive, just kind of everything is going to be fine. I'm feeling okay. It's going to be fine.
Mhm.
Um, I now realize that this is my reality for the rest of my life, is going for these scans. And, at some point there's not going to be just an artifact or a glitch. You know what I mean? It's going to be the real deal.
Mm,
So I think, honestly, just starting to put things in place. I was not organized before. I hadn't updated my will. I hadn't um I hadn't thought even so far as to think about, my end of life care. And, do I want to be cremated? Do I want to, figuring all of that stuff out and making sure that it's known to the people that, need to know about it, and getting all of that stuff organized. It's such a strange thing to do at 40 years old,
mhm.
and not something I ever thought I'd be doing at 40 years old, but I have no idea what's coming. So that in itself is giving me a little bit of peace right now,
Mm.
just knowing that if I get, my next scan, there is something that comes up, at least that is done. Um, that in nature, I find, just to go out. I'm such I have like 20,000 bird feeders now, and squirrels, and I'm always out in my backyard, taking care of them and spending time with nature. It's very grounding. I'm also spiritual too, so meditation and that kind of thing has been really helpful too, just to help sort of keep me grounded. I've realized I have no control over it other than to, don't smoke, don't drink too much, all of those things. I still
Yeah,
have my wine. I said I drink too much in moderation, but
that's it.
you know,
Gotta enjoy. And I think like I'm listening to you, Shanna, and I'm thinking, well, I can see, and there is like we're so resilient as humans sometimes as you look at things. I can see how, and a part of me is glad you are not going in expecting always the worst, like living from test to test, always expecting the absolute worst, because that would also be really difficult. And you can be, I think, realistic and optimistic at the same time. Like in a sense, I don't think those two things are not able to live together. But I can see how, over time, if you get tests and they come back okay, you gain some level of maybe confidence that, okay, right now, maybe things are okay and I'm feeling good. So I think this is one way as well that we cope. Like this is part of, I think, your natural coping mechanism that you've built over time because you have a diagnosis that has a lot of uncertainty attached to it, but you figured out a way to function in full in between all those
yeah.
steps.
When I first had when I first got my diagnosis, my one of my doctors said something to me, and it's something that I replay in my head all the time. And she said to me, "What do you know right now? What do you know?" And okay, I've got breast cancer, because I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna die. My kids, of course." And everybody has that fear when they first get a scary diagnosis like that. And she said, "Stop. What do we know? You have stage 2 cancer. Your chemo is working. What do you know?" And so I try to kind of think of that when my fear, because it still happens. I mean, I'm human, right?
Yeah.
I, try and fall asleep at night, and that's when everything, or you wake up in the middle of the night to go pee, and then you can't go back to sleep because it's like, oh my God, all that's when all the scary shit comes into
Yeah.
your brain. So it's like, okay, bring it back. What do I know right now? Right now, I know I just had an MRI, a full body MRI, and there was no sign of cancer. I know that right now.
Mhm.
So brain, shut up and go back to sleep. Like, stop,
Yeah.
but
And
I
that is,
have to do
and that's so helpful. I think it's in part like cognitive behavioral therapy, or also it's like a mix of bringing ourselves back in the present moment and also in the fact that of what we know. I love that this is what she kind of did with you and for you is let's break it down to what we know in this present moment and go with that, because often I'm not saying that some fears are always irrational. Like sometimes it is a survival instinct that humans have within themselves when you've lived or been diagnosed with a life threatening disease. you know what? It's gonna mess up. It's a mind fuck. Like it's not an easy thing to go
Huge.
through. But then to figure out a way to kind of say, how do I navigate this? I think this is a really great way. And sometimes the reality is what you know is not awesome. But other times it's like, okay, right this second, right this moment, if I'm in bed, if I'm to bring it back as much as possible to the present moment can help. And sometimes it helps just for a minute. And then you try and get through the next minute and then the next minute. And sometimes, we talk to some of our community members, and you would know, Shanna, but sometimes it's like, I just had a shit day. I just felt stressed and scared all day, and it didn't really go away, even if I tried. And it's like, and that is okay too. We're not
Mhm.
robots. We are not robots.
No,
Even when we feel like shit, it's like sometimes it just
yeah.
is.
I luckily have I don't, it's just the way my brain copes with really, really intense emotion. Um, at first, it's like, I cry, but that my brain will just completely shut off emotion. And I know that that is not healthy either. But sometimes I'm so thankful for that ability that,
Yeah.
that my brain just, yeah, sorry, a truck drove by. How dare
And
it?
he's got something to say to you about that.
Oh, this is Larry. Okay, guys, there's nobody here. I
Yeah,
have
the
three
cat
dogs.
behind you, I love it. You're surrounded.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I have three cats and three dogs.
So there we go. Full house. I like it. But
It
yeah,
really is.
so this ability to shut emotions, sometimes it's a very useful defense mechanism, you know?
It, yeah. And yeah. So after I had that scare before, it was a long 2 weeks, but I had just literally parked it like it was gone. You know what I mean? I wasn't, I really felt the emotions at first and then it just shut off. So I'm thankful for the brain's ability to do that.
Yeah, and I think so in the in our so again, for those of you who might be new, Young Adult Cancer Canada, we build a community. We have over 1,300 young adults in a private Facebook space. And we see that, and we've learned actually through Prime that connection really helps with mental health, with distress. So to be connected with peers, Shanna and so many others, when going through these moments of freaking out about the possibility of cancer being back or having progressed, share with each other. And what it does is you're never alone in that feeling, correct? There's always someone else who's in that space.
Yeah. And it's so helpful to have that connection because I obviously am not going to talk to my children about it.
Mhm.
My parents were already worried, like, they were really upset about it. I'm not going to start talking to them about it. It's nice to have sort of a third party that you can just go and share and be honest because I found myself comforting other people
Mhm.
about my test results. I was consoling other people when really I was fucking freaking out myself.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Like, it's okay, guys. Like, what do we know? I'm telling them, like, okay, what do we know? Like,
Yeah.
let's just wait and find out what they say with the next MRI. And so it was really nice just to have that connection with other people where I could, have the freak out.
Yeah. Not protect anyone and just be received. And then sometimes, like our community is, every day, my heart sometimes warms up because they go through a lot and you've gone through a lot. And how you are all able to help each other in sometimes just sharing, me too, this is how I'm feeling today, but also sharing there are a million ways people cope, like you've done today through, okay, for me it's spirituality, is nature, it's meditation, like all those things are super useful. But ultimately the connection and the kind of sharing and normalizing of the experience with your peers is also super powerful. They're full of tools and ways to cope with fear of cancer recurrence and so many other stuff. And I think that's beautiful and so important for our young adult community. One thing before we wrap up that, so Jeff and I, when we were looking at the data from Prime, of course, like, we know that you find some things and then some other things, some other questions comes up, and then you want to understand why this is or this isn't. But one of the finding in that research was around the time since diagnosis. And it appears from the findings that after 5 years, the fear of cancer recurrence reduces. And in the medical system, someone somewhere at some point, I don't know who, established that 5 years was when you pass your 5 year point for some diagnosis, in some circumstances, it's kind of like you're considered cured of cancer, or the chances of recurrence reduce. Um, and when we were looking at the research data, like Shanna, part of me was like, well, I kind of wish that someone had said 2 years instead of 5, because would we see a reduction in fear of recurrence if science said, actually it's more 2 years, it's not 5. I'm not saying that what they said is wrong, but I've talked to a bunch of researchers, and it is not like, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe someone's going to write me and say this is bullshit, whatever. Fair enough. Tell me if I'm wrong. But we were trying to understand, how was that 5 years exactly established when, not a whole lot is known about the young adult cancer experience. There's very still little research done on this age group and population. How do they know that it's the 5 years across the board for all age, all cancer? I'm curious, but that to us was surprising, right? It's like,
Yeah,
oh,
I,
five
I
years.
think same thing. I mean, and every cancer is different, right? So I mean, and I was told too at the 5 year mark, the chances of it reoccurring, it doesn't mean I'm cured, but the the chances of it reoccurring does go down after 5 years.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, dog, relax.
Right.
Um,
He has an opinion about what we're saying. I think that's what's happening.
oh, I know.
And again, like sometimes maybe I'm talking out of my ass, as we say, but it's just more a curiosity, maybe, to say, because I think sometimes words can be quite powerful. And I know many of our community members have been told, always with probably the best intentions and best of care in mind, some information, some statistics, some prognosis that weigh very heavily on people's shoulders and heads and hearts, that can
Yes,
really influence how you cope with fear of cancer recurrence if you are given certain things in affirming this is the
yeah.
situation. And so sometimes I'm like, can we just be careful or
I was
mindful?
really lucky. I have an incredible oncologist, um, and he doesn't believe in giving statistics. And
Wow.
when I was at the retreat yourself, when I was there, I remember a presentation, and I think it was Scott that was doing the presentation. But he said statistics are based on past information,
Yeah.
and treatment and science is continually evolving into the future. So it's taking old data, which is now obsolete. It's not relevant anymore. And that's the information they're giving people to base their, how are you supposed to be optimistic when you have old information, from data where there weren't as many clinical trials and treatments, and
Mhm.
there's a lot more that they can do now.
And it
So
is
I always
not.
think,
Yeah.
and my oncologist doesn't believe in giving statistics. He's never given me you have a whatever percent chance of reoccurrence. He didn't even tell me what grade my cancer was. All I know is it was stage 2. He said that's all you need to know. And he's really sheltered me from that. So, and I'm thankful, because I do think about all those little details all the time. So had he given me something, I would have obsessed over it for sure.
Yes, and everybody's different. And I think it is Scott. I feel like Scott was maybe quoting Jeff. So Jeff Eaton, our executive director, always says, I'm going to say it's slightly different, but basically what he says is statistics are sometimes an accurate reflection of the past, but they're not necessarily an accurate prediction of the future. So what
Yeah.
we know from the past, I think it's okay to try and figure things out. I'm not shitting on science at all. I'm just saying sometimes it can really influence. So, and I know some people will say, Shanna, I want all the information. This is how I cope. Give it all to me, and I'm going to figure out what to do with it. And for others, it's like, you know what? Ease up. But it's not always asked. Okay, what is helpful? You know, it's not like, and I get it. Sometimes our healthcare system, our doctors, or people are overworked, overwhelmed. They do their best. Like I would say, most people always do their best, most times. But sometimes it's like, well, I didn't want all that information, or
No, and
you know,
I always believe information is power, and I do when I know something, I research the shit out of it. If I know something to be true, I'll go and because and that is one of the ways I cope too. I've researched the shit out of Lee syndrome, and I'm part of a Lee syndrome group where I see all the stories, and which maybe contributes to some of my feared reoccurrence, right? But it's that whole, you have to be optimistic, but also, like you were saying, to emo brain, can't think of words, being optimistic, but also realistic, right? That is my reality. So
that's
I'm
it.
still I'm still a work in progress. I don't have any right answer or any solution. I'm still working on it. It's probably something I'm going to have to keep working on for the rest of my life.
That's it. And it's figuring out how to kind of in time say, okay, this is the space, this is the way. And I'm sure that as years pass and hopefully decades pass ahead of you, you'll find all kinds of ways that work for you. And that might work for someone else, or it might be completely different for someone else. We are, with this knowledge that we're gaining and these confirmation, because a lot of what we're finding with Prime study are things that we've seen in our community forever. It's not, fear of cancer recurrence is a topic that has been discussed at every retreat I've been at, and I've done about 30. So it's not new, but for us to have research data to support those things, we're hoping that there is more emphasis on the young adult cancer population and more emphasis on programs and care that can help with that. So if we know that almost 60% of young adults within our study are dealing with really high, significantly clinically significant levels of fear of cancer recurrence, we should pay attention. We should understand where it's coming from and then do things that can help them. So, hopefully, our quick chat on a giant topic helped with some of that. Thank you so much, Shanna, for opening up. Do you have any last parting message that you would say to cancer peers or people who want to help someone who's stressed out? Any words of wisdom?
Just that I get it, and you aren't alone. I'm on the Yak Facebook group, so if anybody that's dealing with it right now wants to shoot me a message, I'm here. It's different for everybody, and I like I said, I'm still a work in progress. I don't have answers, and I'm probably going to be working on it, and it's going to be constantly evolving for me, and I'm sure it will for you. I'm surprised that the percent of people that have a clinically significant fear of reoccurrence isn't higher, to be honest, because pretty well everybody I've talked to that has had a cancer diagnosis has this fear, and it's very real. So you're not alone.
Good words of wisdom. And I think it's true. And I think sometimes, you know, being afraid, being scared is not, we shouldn't be hard on ourselves when that happens, because it does give us tons of information about who we are and how we can cope with this and how we can connect with others to get support around this. It is not because you can't cope that you're feeling fear. It's because you're feeling things, you're connecting with things, and then to do some work to figure that out is kind of the only way through, and then to get the proper support. But to your point, You learn as you go, you do your best, you have good days, you have days that are not so good, and that is so is life. Thank you so much, beautiful, for taking this time to talk to me about fear of cancer recurrence. I'm so grateful. To anyone watching, it is Monday for you, it's not for Shanna and I, whatever, you don't have to know that. I'm gonna remind myself, us, to remember to just breathe. Our breath is quite helpful in life. I know people joke sometimes that, of course, we need to breathe to live. But when I remind myself and others to just breathe, it's just sometimes we forget. Sometimes we have this shallow breath on the top of our chest, and we're actually not really properly putting oxygen in our body. And when we do, that can really, really help. For me, worst case scenario, it usually really always helps me with getting some clarity of how, okay, what do I need to do next now? What is up? What's happening? So it connects you with your kind of inner being parts of you and helps you to kind of figure out, oh, okay, I'm okay. What is the fact right now? I'm talking with Shanna. I'm in my home. It's okay. Everything is good. Deep breath. So remember to do that. Good days and bad days. Hope you've enjoyed this episode and that you have a great rest of whatever's on the go for you. And hope that we see you next week, 7 p.m. Eastern on our Facebook page. Thank you, Shauna. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.